So we have learned how to write sentences using non-essential clauses. That was in writing strategy number 2. And today you're going to learn how to write sentences using appositives. They are similar, but not the same. So the document that you're going to be looking at in a little bit is this one, right, that we've looked at before, where we already learned how to write a sentence starting with an infinitive, with an adjective, with an adverb, and then an appositive. And so we need to understand how to identify where the appositive is in these two sentences, and then how to actually use it in your writing practice today. Okay? All right, so first of all, let's review the non-essential clause. So the non-essential clause, the fancy language, is that a subordinate clause or a participial phrase contains information that is not necessary to the basic meaning of the sentence, right? So in all of these examples, the part that's highlighted is the non-essential clause. So like the first one, Gloria, who lives next door, is my best friend. I could have the sentence, Gloria is my best friend, whether or not I have who lives next door in the middle of it. That's extra information that's nice to know. The same is the case for all the rest of these. Myron, sitting by the pond, thought about his future. It's nice to know that Myron is sitting by the pond, but we don't have to know it to know that he's thinking about his future. The same for the rest of these examples. Now, an appositive is different. An appositive is a noun or a noun phrase that renames another noun right beside it. So it has to be next to a noun, just like the non-essential clause, but it has to be another noun, right? So here's our first example. The puppy, that's a noun. A golden retriever is my newest pet. So we have the phrase a golden retriever to tell us more about the kind of puppy right next to it. Here's another one, which is a little bit longer. A 2-year-old rambunctious puppy, Brady ripped up a pillow while I was in the kitchen. Now, Brady, that's the name of the puppy. The phrase that starts the sentence, a 2-year-old rambunctious puppy, is a noun phrase that tells us more about Brady. In the next one, Amit's favorite teacher in high school, Ms. Johnson, is friendly and approachable. So the main part of the sentence is Ms. Johnson is friendly and approachable. The extra information about Ms. Johnson is right here, right? It's Amit's favorite teacher in high school, and that teacher, that noun, and that phrase about it is telling us more about Ms. Johnson. The last one says, Alicia ate dinner at Chili's, her favorite restaurant, on the weekends. And so Chili's is the name of the restaurant. It's a noun, and it's right next to a whole phrase that describes it, right? All the kind of restaurant that she likes, okay? So up here, you'll notice who lives next door, that's not a noun next to another noun. Or sitting by the pond, that's not another way to talk about Myron. If it was an appositive, it would say Myron, an elderly man, right? So there's a clear difference because these have to be nouns when we're talking about appositives. So the part A, you're going to list the differences you see between the non-essential clauses and the appositives. And then for part B, you're going to identify. You're going to decide, is this an appositive or a non-essential clause? So when you're reading this first one, Gus, Eric's black cat, slowly crept up behind the kittens. You have to decide, is this phrase right here an appositive, which means it would be a noun or a noun phrase that describes Gus, or is it a non-essential clause, just extra information that's nice to know? Okay, same thing for all of these. Then when you get to part C, it's asking you to write your own. So you're going to have to write your own sentence about Lord of the Flies using an appositive, and then write your own sentence about Lord of the Flies using a non-essential clause. Okay, so that's the practice part. Now, when it comes to our document, after you do this part, then you'll have the information to be able to do this part. Because when you get to number 4, you're going to have to identify what the appositive actually is in this example, right? It says, but behind him, on a much higher seat in the middle of the sledge, sat a very different person, a great lady taller than any woman that Edmund had ever seen. You need to identify the part of that that is the appositive. So it's a noun phrase describing a noun that's in the sentence. The next part, Filch owned a cat called Mrs. Norris, a scrawny, dust-colored creature with bulging lamp-like eyes just like Filch's. Again, you have to identify where the appositive is. Okay, now normally we would talk about this together, so I'm going to do that now. So this first part, but behind him, I know that that's a short phrase, but there's no noun next to it, so that's not describing a person that's right next to it. So it says, on a much higher seat in the middle of the sledge sat a very different person. And then right next to that is a phrase describing the person, the great lady. So that's our appositive, right? Now, next to it, it says taller than any woman that Edmund had ever seen. If you wanted to include that too, you could, because that's also describing the different person who is taller than any woman that Edmund had ever seen. But the essential part is right here, a great lady. Now, in the next part, when it says Filch owned a cat called Mrs. Norris is the name of the cat. And then after that, this whole phrase describes the cat. A scrawny, dust-colored creature with bulging lamp-like eyes, just like Filch's, right? So there's our appositive. Now, when you go to answer this question, you're going to explain the effects. So you're going to write either about the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe quote about this great lady that Edmund had is taller than any woman that Edmund had ever seen before, or you're going to talk about Mrs. Norris and the description of her. So you're not writing that the writer is painting a picture. That's bull. You need to write about the tone or mood that's created. It's up to you what you want to do. If you want to say the tone that's created by, and then you'd have the quotation, is, right? And then you describe it. Or you could do the same thing with tone, with mood. The mood that's created by, and then you put the quote, is, you say whatever that is, because, and then you'd explain it. Okay? So that's your practice here before you can do your independent practice on your vocabulary assignment.